We have heard that about anti-Semitism, and you are a very active part of this, the Global Forum for Combating Anti-Semitism too. So
Yep.
would you like to tell us about that as well?
Okay. So the Global Forum is an international group, a conference that involves experts from right around the world, as well as normally a lot of diplomats, politicians, etc. And it comes together once every 2 years to discuss all sorts of issues to do with anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism is hatred against Jewish people.
Okay.
So this conference discusses all sorts of things from denial of the Holocaust, the Nazi persecution, through to desecration of gravestones, through to physical attacks on people, and it does it right around the world, looking country by country, looking at new types of anti-Semitism, looking at the far right, the far left, wherever it's coming from. Last time the Global Forum met, which is almost 2 years ago now, there were, I think it was 5 working groups set up. One of
Okay.
these working groups was specifically on internet anti-Semitism.
Okay.
So I was asked to co-chair this group along with a lawyer from Canada. So we got this group of people together, and it included a number of advisors to presidents, prime ministers, from all over the world,
Okay.
as well as these experts. We had advisors from countries that have hardly, presidential advisors from countries in Africa that have hardly any internet,
Oh,
but
okay.
they found it important to come and be part of what we were doing.
Right.
So although the working group focuses on online anti-Semitism, so online hatred against Jews, some of the solutions we come up with and some of the issues we discuss are actually very general in nature. So they relate to hatred against all sorts of groups of people
Okay.
and how that's expressed on the internet. So last time we produced a very big report, I think it was 17 pages, which was full of a list of issues. What are the current issues online? So for example, Facebook said that hatred was not acceptable, but Holocaust denial they would not consider to be hatred. And this was the only form of hatred that Facebook would allow. So there was
Okay.
a big campaign about that. We had all sorts of issues on different platforms, different countries, related to the internet. And we came out with recommendations for what government should do, what technology companies should do, what teachers should do, what parents should do, and what NGOs should do. And we published this report, and since then we've been slowly, pushing it through different international bodies. We've been writing articles about it. We've been expanding some of the ideas. So we're about to meet hopefully again in a couple of months.
Okay.
Just the online working group. And one of the big issues that's come forward from last time, and also from another group that meets in between, is that we're not actually monitoring online anti-Semitism at the moment. We have a lot of NGOs that produce reports showing examples of it, but there's no numbers. There's no numbers that say this is how many incidents there were on Facebook. This is how many
Okay.
YouTube videos there were calling for people to be killed. This is how many how many Twitter accounts there are with names or with messages
Right.
that are actually call it death threats to groups and people and problems like that. So one of the big pushes we're still working on is to find ways of monitoring the problem and being able to produce reports so that NGOs, governments, civil society as a whole can know how big the problem is and whether the various approaches we're trying to build to deal with it, everything from education to new laws, actually has an effect. If we don't have a baseline, we won't know if we're making an impact.
Of course, yeah, and most of these organizations would like to have something that is backed by statistical data. So, yes, it makes sense.
Yes. But part of the problem is social media, because we're looking specifically at anti-Semitism in social media.
Right.
Social media is so huge, so many messages so quickly, that it makes that task technically difficult. I
Right.
don't think it's impossible, but it is difficult.
Right, and I think also for that you will need to have the support of these platforms like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter to be willing to provide you that data. So
I'm not so sure that we will get their support, because it's in their
mhm.
interest to have as
Right,
much discussion as possible,
right,
including things that might, so there are certain things they don't allow, and they tend to not allow them because they're illegal.
right.
So the issue we've got in Australia, for example,
Mm-hmm.
racial hatred is actually illegal. So there are laws in this country against it. The same in Canada, the same in the UK.
Right.
Um, so the question we've got is, if people are breaching laws, what can we do about it?
Mm-hmm.
And if the technology company's in the US, but the person spreading hatred is in, let's say, Australia,
Mm-hmm.
and the content is being seen by people in Australia, then surely the Australian government and the police, etc., should be able to do something. The fact
Right.
that it's going through a channel that's in the US shouldn't mean that a local issue like that can't be resolved by local law enforcement.
Right.
So that's the sort of challenge we need to work on. It would be great if the companies lived up to their terms of service, and if those terms of service were very strong against all sorts of hatred.
Uh-huh.
But if they don't step up to the plate, I think it's a role for government to intervene.
Absolutely.
The same way they do on privacy issues.
Okay, I heard from you earlier that you were planning the agenda for countering online anti-Semitism. So, what's on the plan for that?
The major thing, as I said, is to work out how we monitor it. That's a technical challenge we need to solve. Other things we need to look at is what have been the major incidents in the last few years. Literally the last 2 years since the last meeting. There have been a number of things that we need to discuss, examine, and put down on paper. We also need to look at new channels. So Twitter wasn't so big 2 years ago.
Right.
So what are the issues now with this new technology? There's a new push with Facebook Places and with Foursquare and with other geotagging services.
Right.
So if people are going to tag things, does this have any impact on the problem we deal with? For example, if people are going to tag a place and encourage people to go and attack people there,
Right.
that's a real threat. That's a whole different level of social media meets the real world, rather than just messages online. At that point, do we have things in place that if there's a credible threat to a specific place, that we can get the information we need to deal with it, or that police and government can get the information they need?
Right.
So these are some of the issues. There's other aspects as well, such as positive initiatives, efforts to educate school children in particular, so that they learn about online hate and they learn why it's a bad thing and should be avoided. And also if they're being, for example, bullied online, so that the students can learn what they should do, how they should report it, who they should go and see to get support. So all sorts of initiatives like this are also happening.
Right.
And we need to try and collect these things together so that we can present a report on, well, what's best practice. If you don't have something in your country and you want to know how to do it, what organisations have already done this that you can go to share ideas?
Okay. I was just wondering, because since in 2 years, all the social media they progress really fast. So
Yes.
is it a little disadvantageous for the global forum, because if they're going to meet only every 2 years, they might have, there will be definitely a lot of events that have happened in the social media world in those 2 years. So isn't it like a lot to catch up on?
It is a lot of movement. At the same time, a meeting firstly there's the global forum every 2 years, and in the years in between there's another forum called the ICCA, which is an interparliamentary gathering for dealing with anti-Semitism that meets. So there is a conference every year, but they're two sort of separate streams. One's more for politicians and one's more for experts. And but even so, yes, there is a time lag between meetings, but we're dealing with government officials. We're dealing with very important people, and work continues the rest of the year. But to be able to get everyone together, even every 2 years, is, I think, very positive. It shows a lot of real effort has been put into the problem.
Okay.